guys? Matt from Irontrap Garage doing an episode again on the Sweetheart Roadster frame. So in the last episode we worked on getting the rear wishbones shortened up and mounted to the center cross member. Pretty happy with that. Got stuff probably half welded so that everything's strong enough that we can roll it around and kind of work with it from there. So the next thing I want to tackle is trying to get the frame notched around the rear axle. We have, once the body's on this thing, now that we've taken the chassis, it was sitting on the rear wishbones. So now that those are free and out of the way, now the chassis kind of sits down. As soon as we put any kind of weight from the body on this, the frame's going to be sitting right down on top of this axle. So I want to put a pretty good sized notch in the rear frame kick-up so that we can be sure that I have plenty of travel and I can get the frame and the body down just a little bit lower to get it kind of sitting how I've been envisioning it to have the stance that I want. So what we're going to do, I'm going to do this a little differently, at least try it. I always say that, and then halfway through I might change my mind, but this is what I have planned for doing the notch here. So what we're going to do is, in here, I just want to change basically the shape of the lift that's coming out of the bottom, the shape of the bottom of the frame here. So I'm going to cut it right along this edge in here and this bottom flange. What I'm going to do is cut this loose, and then I'm going to lift this up till I get it about, there's some rough marker lines that I've drawn on here. So I'm going to mark it and try and reshape it so that it comes up and goes along. And then what I can do, any excess that's hanging below that, then I can just trim it off with a cutoff grinder, take a flat disc, sand it smooth so that there's a nice edge there. I can TIG weld it back together. You could never tell that it was there. And then eventually we're going to put some flanged boxing plates inside of this that I'll have to custom make to match this, and then it'll be plenty strong once it's done. So I'm going to start on this side here. I'm going to drill these actually sand these two rivets and knock them out. It's for a little strengthening plate that went over the notch on later 32s, came with that. So I need to take that out so that I can kind of reshape that bottom flange. So I'll do that first, then we'll cut that loose, start moving everything around and slicing and dicing, and hopefully we'll have a little bit of extra room here shortly. Okay, so I know you can't see all of me, but I wanted to get a close-up in here, so my hands will have to do for now. So right in here, when we cut this loose and we pulled everything up, it made a big gap on the bottom section here, just because of naturally when you pull this up, it pulls the material away, and we have a gap right here. So what I want to do is try and blend this bottom lip and get it to curve up and go into the rear cross member. It'll tie everything together. It'll give it some extra strength as well. So there's a little bit of the original flange under here. So I'm going to cut that off. I made a little pattern here. So this little pattern I'm going to trace onto some 1/8" steel to match what the frame is. And that's going to go against, and it's going to wrap up around and then connect in the back, and it should kind of hammer up into the cross member. I should be able to weld it to the cross member as well, keep everything connected. So that's a nice way to do this, so that everything kind of flows. Ideally it's going to sit up against this bottom lip here once I'm done. It's just I haven't cut it away yet, so the pattern can't touch there. So it's going to touch along the bottom edge there, and it's going to wrap all the way up underneath and into the back of the cross member, and everything will weld together and look really nice and smooth. So let me cut this piece out, get everything fit in with the piece of metal I got to shape in there, and then we can get that welded in. We got one side pretty much all roughed in, and everything's welded pretty decent. So until we flip the chassis over, we're pretty good with this one. So need to move on to the other side. And I want to try and replicate the shape that we got here. I really like how it flows, and I also want it to be symmetrical. So what I'm going to do is take just some paper that I have here, and I'm going to lay it on the frame rail here, and I'm going to use this hole. It's a factory hole that I left in place. I'm going to use that as a reference point here. And what I'm going to do is just trace the top and the bottom of the frame rail, like so. What this is going to do is going to let me cut this out with a pair of scissors, and I can trace it, or lay this on the other frame rail, switch it around, lay it on the other frame rail, and then I can follow this same shape when I trace where I need to cut out. So that there, I'm going to cut out with some scissors, flip it, put it on the other side, trace it on the outside of the frame rail, and then I can cut and follow that, and then we can bend the bottom up and do the same process, sand everything down, weld it in place, and hopefully this one will go a little bit quicker. So I'll get this cut out next. work done today. That was not a small task by any means doing this. So got both rear notches pretty much all welded in place. I got a little bit of finish welding and grinding and blending to do, of course, but when we blow the car all back apart, I'll end up doing all that in one shot. So got that all done. Car sits about, I don't know, 3/4 of an inch lower than it was before after everything's clearanced, but it still wanted to sit just a little lower, maybe about inch and a half. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to work on next time cutting the rear cross member and getting it to sit down just a little lower in the rear so it hits right where I want it to hit. So that's our project for next time. So that's all I got for this week. Thanks guys for watching. Catch you later.